The first time someone called me Marcus, I thought they'd just gotten my name wrong. The second time, I started paying attention. By the fifth time, I knew something was very wrong. And when I finally figured out who they thought I was, I wished I'd never asked. My name is David Chen, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, stationed in northeastern Syria as part of a joint task force training local militia units. Standard advisory role, we weren't supposed to engage directly, just teach tactics, observe, and report back. Clean mission. Simple mission. At least, that's what I thought when I stepped off the transport at a dusty forward operating base outside Hasaka in March 2019. I'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. I knew the drill. Keep your head down, build rapport with the locals, don't get involved in regional politics. I was good at my job. I spoke enough Arabic to get by, I respected the culture, and I had a knack for reading people. My team trusted me. My commanders relied on me. That trust would end up costing me everything. The base was small, maybe 50 American personnel, another 100 local militia fighters rotating through training cycles. We shared space with a Kurdish unit that had been fighting in the region for years. Good fighters, disciplined. They knew the terrain better than any map could show you. The first week was routine. We ran drills on small unit tactics, practiced vehicle checkpoints, worked on radio communication protocols. The local fighters were eager to learn, respectful. Everything felt normal. Then on day 8, I was walking across the compound to the chow hall when one of the Kurdish fighters stopped dead in his tracks. He was young, maybe 22, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Marcus," he said. Just that, one word. "David," I corrected, tapping my name tape. "Staff Sergeant Chen." His face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear. Then he turned and walked away fast, almost running. I watched him go, frowning. Weird, but not alarming. Culture shock, maybe. Some of these guys had never worked this close with Americans before. I forgot about it until 3 days later. We were doing a joint patrol through a nearby village, part of the Hearts and Minds effort, showing cooperation between coalition forces and local fighters. Standard stuff. Wave at kids, buy tea from old men, make sure everyone sees us getting along. The village was small, maybe 40 buildings clustered around a well, chickens scratching in the dust, a couple of goats tied to a fence post. An old woman sat in a doorway shelling something into a bowl. As we walked past, she looked up at me and spat. Not toward me, directly at me. Before I could react, a man came out of the building, her son maybe, or nephew. He put himself between us, speaking rapid-fire Arabic to my interpreter, a local kid named Amir who worked with our unit. Amir's face went pale. He turned to me, then back to the man, then to me again. "What's he saying?" I asked. He says you should not come back here, that you are not welcome." "Why not?" Amir hesitated. The man was still talking, gesturing at me, his voice getting louder. Other villagers were coming out now, watching. "This is a small village, sir. Everyone knows everyone. He says you were here before, 2 months ago. He says you came with the Russian contractors. He says you—" Amir stopped. "He says what?" "He took 3 men from this village. They have not come back." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. "Tell him he's got the wrong person. I've never been here before. I just arrived in country 8 days ago." Amir translated. The man shook his head violently, pointing at my face. More villagers gathered. The atmosphere was shifting from hostile to dangerous. My patrol partner, a sergeant named Rodriguez, moved closer to me, hand near his sidearm. "Chen, we need to move," Rodriguez said quietly. We backed away slowly, keeping our hands visible, non-threatening. But as we left, I heard the man shout something else. I didn't need Amir to translate that one. I knew enough Arabic to understand. Marcus. His name is Marcus. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bunk staring at the corrugated metal ceiling, trying to make sense of it. A case of mistaken identity? Had to be. But the man was so certain, and the old woman, the hate in her eyes was real, personal. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through the photos I'd taken since arriving. My own face looked back at me from a selfie I'd sent to my sister. Average Asian American features, black hair, brown eyes, nothing particularly distinctive. Syria had a small Chinese minority, sure, but someone who looked enough like me to cause this kind of confusion? The odds seemed impossible. Over the next 2 weeks, it happened 4 more times. Different villages, different people, same reaction. Some hostile, some afraid. One old man grabbed my sleeve and begged me for what? I couldn't tell. Amir refused to translate that one, just shook his head and said we should leave. Each time, the name came up. Marcus. I started asking questions, carefully. Didn't want to seem too interested, didn't want to spook anyone. But I pulled aside some of the Kurdish fighters I'd built rapport with, bought them chai, let conversations drift in the right direction. A fighter named Koban finally gave me something solid. We were cleaning weapons after a range day, and I mentioned the village incident casually, like it was just a funny story about mistaken identity. Koban didn't laugh. He set down the rifle he was working on and looked at me for a long moment. "You have a brother?" he asked. "A sister, no brother." "Are you certain?" "Pretty certain, yeah. I think I'd remember." Koban nodded slowly. "There is a man, an American. He works with the Russian contractors, Wagner Group. You know them?" I knew them. Private military company, officially Russian, but operating in Syria with a nod and a wink from Moscow. They were on the other side of this fight, backing the Assad regime while we backed the Kurds and moderate rebel groups. Mercenaries with no rules and no accountability. "What about him?" I asked. "He looks like you, very much like you, same face. When I first saw you, I thought you had him. I thought maybe you had changed sides." Koban picked up his rifle again. "This man, Marcus, he is not a good person. He does interrogations. He finds people who have information, and he takes them away. Some come back. Many do not." Before I tell you what I did next, if you're hooked on this story, hit the like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you are listening from. I went to my commanding officer the next morning. Captain Williams was a by-the-book West Point graduate, 2 years older than me, who treated every regulation like it was carved in stone. Good officer, but not someone who appreciated complications. I laid out what I'd learned, the mistaken identity incidents, the name Marcus, the Wagner Group connection. I expected him to be concerned, maybe order an investigation, run it up the chain of command. Instead, he got quiet. That particular kind of quiet that means you've just stepped in something you don't understand. "Let me look into this," he said. "In the meantime, Staff Sergeant, I want you to stay on base. No more village patrols, no more interactions with local fighters outside of training activities. Understood?" "Sir, I think—" "That's an order, Chen." I should have pushed back. I should have demanded answers. But you don't make Staff Sergeant by arguing with captains, so I saluted and left. For 3 days I stayed on base, ran training drills, cleaned equipment, wrote emails home to my sister. Tried not to think about a man with my face working for the other side. Tried not to wonder why Captain Williams had shut down so fast. On the 4th day, Koban found me in the equipment shed. "You need to see something," he said. "I'm not supposed to leave base." "I know. That is why you need to see this." He handed me his phone. The screen showed a photo, grainy and shot from a distance, but clear enough. A man in civilian clothes standing next to a Russian military truck. Black hair, Asian features, medium build. He could have been me. He could have been my reflection. But it was the context that made my blood run cold. In the background of the photo, 3 men knelt in the dirt, hands bound behind their backs. The man who looked like me was holding something. I couldn't tell what from the photo quality, but from the postures of the kneeling men, I could guess. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "A friend, someone who has eyes where we do not. This was taken 6 weeks ago, 40 kilometers from here." I zoomed in on the face. The resemblance was impossible. Not similar, not close, identical. Same jawline, same nose, same everything. Like looking at a photograph of myself that I had no memory of taking. "There's more," Koban said. He swiped to another photo. This one was clearer, taken from the side. The man I was looking at had a scar on his left forearm, the exact same place I had a scar from a training accident in Afghanistan. 3 inches long, slightly curved. The equipment shed felt too small suddenly. I handed the phone back, my hands not quite steady. "Who is he?" I asked. "I was hoping you could tell me." I went back to Captain Williams. This time I didn't wait for him to shut me down. "Sir, I need access to my personnel file. Full file, including my background check and family history." "That's not standard procedure for—" "I need it today, sir. Please." Something in my voice must have convinced him, or maybe he'd already gotten orders from above because he nodded and made a call. 2 hours later, I was sitting in his office with a manila folder that contained my entire life, according to the U.S. Army. Birth certificate: David Michael Chen, born September 14, 1989, in San Francisco, California. Mother: Linda Chen. Father: unknown. Grew up in foster care from age 2 after my mother passed. Bounced between homes until I was 18 and joined the Army. Standard story. I'd lived it. I knew it by heart. Except now I was looking at it differently. Father: unknown. I'd never thought much about it before. Lots of kids grow up without knowing their fathers. But now that single word felt like a door I'd never noticed, and behind it, something was waiting. "Sir, I need to make a call home." Williams nodded. "Use my office. I'll give you privacy." I called my sister, Emma. She was 6 years older than me, had been in foster care too, but in a different home. We'd reconnected when I turned 20, and now she was the only family I had. She worked as a nurse in Seattle, had 2 kids, lived a normal life. She answered on the 3rd ring. "David, everything okay? You don't usually call during the day." "I need you to tell me everything you know about Mom and our father." Silence on the other end. Then, "Why? What's going on?" "Please, Em, it's important." She sighed. "I don't know much. You know that. Mom never talked about him. When I asked, she'd get this look on her face and change the subject. All I know is what I overheard once when she was talking to a social worker. She said—" Emma paused. "She said it was complicated, that there had been a pregnancy she didn't expect, that she'd made a choice she regretted." "What choice?" "I don't know. I was 8. I didn't understand what they were talking about then, and Mom died before I was old enough to ask properly." A pregnancy she didn't expect. A choice she regretted. "Em, do you remember if Mom ever mentioned twins? Or if there was any indication she'd had more than one baby?" Another long silence. "David, what the hell is going on over there?" I told her about the mistaken identity, the photo, the impossible resemblance. When I finished, she was quiet for so long I thought the connection had dropped. "Emma?" "Give me 2 days," she said. "I'm going to make some calls. There was a social worker, the one who handled Mom's case. She might still be around. I'll find out what I can." "Thank you." "David, be careful, okay? I don't like this." I didn't like it either. Now, here's where everything changed. But real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach. 2 days felt like 2 years. I went through the motions of my duties, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about that photo, about a man with my face doing things I'd never do, about 3 men kneeling in the dust, about a mother who'd made a choice she regretted. Emma called back on a Thursday evening. I was in my bunk and the satellite connection was terrible, her voice cutting in and out. "David, found the social worker, said Mom, twin pregnancy, financial hardship, only keep 1. "Em, you're breaking up. Say that again?" The line cleared for a moment. "Mom had twins, you and a brother. She couldn't afford to keep both of you. She gave 1 up for adoption. Private adoption, handled through a Catholic charity. The records were sealed." The world tilted sideways. "Which one did she keep?" "What? Which one did she keep? Was I the one she wanted, or was I the backup?" "David, don't think like that. She loved you. The line cut out.
I tried calling back 3 times, but the satellite connection was down for the night. I sat there in the dark, staring at nothing. I had a twin brother. Somewhere out there was another David Chen who'd lived a completely different life, who'd been chosen by different parents, who'd grown up with opportunities I'd never had, who'd become something I couldn't recognize, who worked for the Wagner Group and made people disappear. The next morning, I made a decision. A bad one, probably, but I couldn't just sit on base knowing what I knew. I needed answers. I needed to understand how a man with my exact face, my exact genetics, had ended up on the opposite side of this war. I waited until the evening patrol rotation, when I knew security would be focused on the perimeter, and I slipped out the back gate. I'd pulled the duty roster earlier, knew who was on watch, knew their patterns. I'd done this kind of thing in training exercises before. Never thought I'd do it for real. Koban was waiting for me 200 meters from the base, sitting on an old motorcycle that looked like it had survived 3 wars. "You are going to get in trouble for this," he said. "Probably. Where do we go?"
I showed him the second photo he'd given me, the one with the clearer view. In the background, barely visible, there was a building with distinctive blue shutters and water tower with Arabic writing on it. "You know this place?" Koban squinted at the photo. "Maybe. There is a village, Al-Rashid, about 30 kilometers east. Russian contractors use it sometimes as a forward position. But Chen, if we go there..." "I know. You could be taken, or worse." "I know." He studied me for a long moment, then handed me a helmet. "Your funeral." The ride took 40 minutes, bouncing over roads that barely deserved the name. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. It should have been beautiful. All I could think about was what we'd find when we got there. Al-Rashid was larger than I expected, maybe 200 buildings, more scattered than clustered. We parked the motorcycle behind an abandoned building on the outskirts and moved in on foot. Koban led the way, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. We stayed in the shadows, avoiding the main streets. A few people saw us, but no one raised an alarm. Out here, you learn to mind your business. We found the building with the blue shutters. It looked abandoned now, windows dark, no vehicles outside. But there were tire tracks in the dirt, recent ones. Someone had been here. "I will watch," Koban whispered. "You go." I moved to the door. It wasn't locked. Inside, the building was empty except for some scattered furniture and trash. I was turning to leave when I saw it, a bulletin board on one wall with papers still pinned to it. I pulled out my phone, used the flashlight. Most of the papers were in Russian, which I couldn't read, but there were photographs, surveillance photos of people, mostly men, with notes scribbled beneath them. And there, in the center, was a photo of Marcus Chen. Except it wasn't me. The photo showed a man in tactical gear, standing beside a Russian officer. Same face, same build, but there was something different in the eyes, something harder. The caption beneath was in English, "Marcus Chen, Interrogation Specialist." I took a photo of it with my phone, my hands shaking slightly. Then I noticed something else. Beneath Marcus's photo, there was a handwritten note in English. "Born September 14, 1989. Adopted through St. Catherine's, San Francisco. Contact unknown. Family unknown. Recruited 2015. The same birthday, the same adoption agency Emma had mentioned. I heard Koban hiss a warning outside, voices getting closer, Russian voices. I grabbed 2 more papers from the board. They looked like reports, maybe I could find someone to translate later, and bolted for the door. Koban was already moving, gesturing frantically for me to follow. We ran. Behind us, shouts. Someone had seen us. I heard the crack of a rifle, felt the bullet snap past my head. We zigzagged between buildings, Koban leading. He knew this terrain better than I knew my own base. We made it back to the motorcycle. Koban kicked it to life, and I jumped on behind him.
More shots, but wild, inaccurate in the darkness. We roared away into the desert, putting distance between us and al-Rashid. We didn't stop until we were within sight of the base. Koban killed the engine, and we sat there, breathing hard. "That was stupid," he said. "Yeah. Did you find anything?" I showed him the photo on my phone. He studied it for a long moment. "He is your brother." "Yeah. What will you do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What do you do when you find out your identical twin exists and he's working for the enemy? What do you do when you know he's done terrible things, when people fear and hate you because of his actions? I need to tell you what happened next, but first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. I should have gone straight to Captain Williams. I should have reported everything, turned over the documents I'd stolen, and let the army handle it. That's what regulations said. That's what training said. But I didn't. Because when I looked at that photo of Marcus Chen, I saw something that everyone else would miss. I saw the same face I saw in the mirror every morning. And despite everything, despite what he'd done, despite which side he was on, I felt something I couldn't explain. A pull, a need to understand. How does someone with your exact DNA end up on the opposite side of everything you believe in? I spent the next week digging. I couldn't do it officially, so I did it carefully. I traded favors with intelligence guys, bought drinks for people who had access to databases I didn't. Piece by piece, I built a picture of Marcus Chen.
Born the same day as me, given up for adoption through St. Catherine's Catholic Charities in San Francisco, adopted by a couple named Robert and Sarah Chen. No relation to our birth mother, just happened to have the same last name. They were older, wealthy. Robert Chen was a defense contractor who'd made his fortune in the private sector during the Iraq War. Marcus grew up in Connecticut, private schools, Yale undergraduate, military service, Marines, one tour in Iraq, honorable discharge. Then the trail got murky. He worked for a few different security companies, moved around a lot. By 2015, he disappeared from U.S. records entirely. That's when he showed up in Syria, working for Wagner Group. The more I learned, the more I saw the divergence. We'd started from the exact same genetic code, but our lives had split like a tree fork. I grew up in foster homes, learned to fight for everything I had, joined the army because it was the only path I saw to stability. He grew up with money and opportunity, went to an Ivy League school, had doors open that I'd never even known existed. But somehow, we'd both ended up in Syria, on opposite sides, doing versions of the same job. The universe has a sick sense of humor sometimes. I was lying in my bunk one night, thinking about all of this, when Rodriguez knocked on my door. "Chen, Captain wants to see you. Now." My stomach dropped. "What about?" Didn't say, but he had that look. I knew that look. I'd been expecting it since the night I snuck off base. Captain Williams was waiting in his office with two men I didn't recognize. Civilian clothes, but military posture. Intelligence, probably. Or something worse. "Staff Sergeant Chen," Williams said, "these gentlemen have some questions for you." The older of the two men gestured to a chair. "Have a seat, Sergeant. This is a friendly conversation." Friendly conversations don't usually start with two spooks in a locked room, but I sat. "We understand you've been making inquiries," the man said, "about a Wagner Group operative named Marcus Chen." I could have lied, should have lied, but something told me they already knew everything. "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because people keep mistaking me for him, because he looks exactly like me, because I found out he's my twin brother." The two men exchanged a glance. The younger one opened a folder and slid a photo across the desk. It was Marcus, in Russian tactical gear, standing with three other men. "Do you know what your brother does for Wagner Group, Sergeant?" "I've heard stories." "The stories are true, probably worse than you've heard. He's been operating in Syria for 4 years. He specializes in extracting information from high-value targets. He's very good at his job. He's also extremely dangerous. I haven't had any contact with him. We know that, but the locals don't know that. To them, you and Marcus Chen are the same person. That puts you at risk. It also puts our mission at risk." The older man leaned forward. "We have a proposition for you, Sergeant Chen. Something that could help resolve this situation. Are you interested?" I should have said no. I should have walked out right then. Instead, I said, "I'm listening." They wanted me to make contact with Marcus, to use the confusion about our identity to get close to him, to gather intelligence on Wagner Group operations, on Russian movements, on everything Marcus knew. "He won't recognize you. He doesn't know you exist. As far as he knows, he's an only child. His adoptive parents never told him about the adoption. You want me to impersonate his reflection. We want you to meet your brother. What happens after that is up to you." Captain Williams spoke the first time. "Chen, you don't have to do this. I want that on record. This is voluntary." But was it really? If I said no, what then? I'd still be a liability, still be confused with Marcus every time we went outside the wire. The mission would still be at risk. And underneath all the practical considerations, there was something else, something I didn't want to admit to myself. I wanted to meet him. I wanted to look my twin brother in the eye and understand how we'd become such different people. I wanted to know if we were really as identical as everyone thought, or if the choices we'd made had changed us into something fundamentally different. "How would it work?" I asked. They laid it out. Simple plan, really. They'd arrange for me to be captured during a patrol. Nothing that would look suspicious to my unit, just bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. I'd be taken to a location where Wagner Group was known to operate, where Marcus was known to operate. "He'll want to interrogate you himself," the older Dan said. "American soldier captured behind enemy lines? That's too valuable to pass up. Once you're face to face with him, you'll have a chance to make contact, to start building a relationship. And if he realizes who I am? Then you use it. Play on the connection. You're his twin brother. Even if he's never known about you, that bond is real. It's biological. Use it. And if he doesn't care? If he just sees me as the enemy?" The two men exchanged another look. "Then you'll have about 10 minutes to escape before things get very unpleasant. But we'll have assets nearby. Extraction will be possible." Possible. Not guaranteed. I thought about my sister, Emma, and her 2 kids who called me Uncle David. I thought about the life I'd built in the army, the men and women who trusted me. I thought about what would happen to that trust if anyone found out I'd volunteered for this. Then I thought about 3 men kneeling in the dust and a man with my face standing over them. "When do we start?" I asked. The operation was set for 3 days later. They gave me a cover story to tell my unit. I was being reassigned to a classified mission, temporary duty, no further details available. Rodriguez bought it. Most of the others did too. A few gave me looks that said they knew something was off, but nobody asked questions. The night before, I wrote a letter to Emma, just in case. I told her I loved her, that I was proud of the life she'd built, that her kids were the best thing in our family. I didn't tell her what I was about to do. She'd try to stop me. I sealed it and left it in my bunk, addressed and ready to mail. The next morning, I climbed into a vehicle with 6 Kurdish fighters I'd never met before. They knew their part. Drive the patrol route, stage an ambush, make it look real. One of them would be slightly wounded. I would be captured. The ambush happened 15 kilometers from base, right on schedule. Gunfire from both sides, more noise than accuracy. One of the Kurdish fighters took a round in the arm, grazing hit exactly as planned. I put my hands up, let myself be dragged out of the vehicle, let them bind my wrists with zip ties. They threw a hood over my head and shoved me into a truck. The drive lasted maybe 20 minutes. When they pulled the hood off, I was in a concrete building that smelled like diesel and old blood. 4 men stood around me, all speaking Russian. One of them pulled my ID tags off, examined them, said something that made the others laugh. They left me alone in the room for 3 hours. Standard intimidation tactic, let the prisoners sit in silence, let their imagination do the work. I had trained for this. I knew the playbook.
but knowing it doesn't make it easier. Finally, the door opened. A Russian officer came in, spoke to me in accented English. Standard questions: name, rank, unit, mission. I gave him the minimum required by the Geneva Convention. He didn't seem particularly interested in the answers anyway. "We have someone who wants to meet you, someone very interested in captured American soldiers." He left. I waited. The door opened again. And there I was. There he was, Marcus, my twin brother, walking into the room like he owned it, dressed in civilian tactical gear, a sidearm on his hip. He stopped when he saw me, actually stopped mid-step, his face going blank with shock. For a long moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other, two identical faces processing an impossible situation. Then Marcus laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Well," he said, "this is unexpected." His voice was the same as mine, same pitch, same cadence. Hearing him speak was like listening to a recording of myself. "You knew, you had to know." "About you?" He moved closer, circling me like I was a sculpture in a museum. "No, I had no idea. You?" "I found out 2 weeks ago." "How?" "People kept mistaking me for you. I started asking questions." He nodded slowly. "And now you're here, captured. Coincidence?" "Doesn't matter." Marcus pulled up a chair, sat backwards on it, arms crossed across the back. "I suppose not. Either way, I have an American soldier in my custody. The fact that it happens to have my face just makes it more interesting." "Aren't you curious about how this happened? About why we were separated?" "I know how it happened. Our birth mother couldn't afford 2 kids. She kept one, gave one away. Classic story." "You knew you were adopted?" "Found out when I was 16. Went through a phase where I was angry about it. Did some research, found the adoption records, saw that the birth mother had died, that there was a sister somewhere. I never looked for her, never looked for you. Didn't see the point." He said it so casually, like it didn't matter. Like our shared genetics were just a random fact, not something that connected us. "Do you know what I do?" Marcus asked. "What my job is here?" "I've heard." "Then you know talking to me is a very bad idea. I'm quite good at making people give me information they don't want to share." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." He stood up, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "I'm going to step out for a few minutes. Going to let you think about your situation. When I come back, we can have a real conversation about who you are and what you're doing here. Or we can do this the hard way. Your choice, brother." The way he said brother, like it was a foreign word, something he was trying on for size, sent a chill down my spine. The door closed. I was alone again. I sat there in that concrete room, zip ties cutting into my wrists, and tried to figure out my next move. The intelligence officers had said to build a relationship, to use the twin connection. But Marcus didn't seem interested in connection. He seemed interested in information. Maybe that was my way in. Give him something. Build trust through cooperation. Except I didn't have any real information to give. My mission was a cover story. My unit was doing exactly what they said they were doing. I had nothing Wagner Group would want. Unless I gave them something else. When Marcus came back, he had a bottle of water and 2 cups. He poured water into both, handed me one. I couldn't reach it with my hands bound, so he held it to my lips while I drank. The gesture was almost gentle, almost brotherly. Then he sat down again and looked at me with eyes that were mirrors of my own. "Tell me about your life," he said. "I'm genuinely curious. Where did you grow up? How did you end up here?" So I told him about foster care, about the army, about making staff sergeant and deploying to Syria. I edited out the intelligence operation, the staged capture, the mission to get close to him. But everything else was true. He listened without interrupting. When he finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You got the raw deal," he said finally. "Foster care while I had private schools, army while I had Yale, fighting for survival while I had trust funds. You served too, Marines, right?" His eyebrows went up. "You've been doing homework." "Some." "One tour. Iraq, 2011. I thought it would mean something. Thought I'd find purpose or honor or whatever the recruiters promised. Instead, I found bureaucracy and politics and leaders who cared more about their careers than their men. He poured himself more water. So I got out, found that private sector paid better and asked fewer questions. Wagner Group doesn't ask questions? Wagner Group has clarity. We know who we work for and what we're paid to do. No pretense of noble causes or spreading democracy, just honest work for honest pay. Honest. I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. More honest than what you're doing, fighting a war your country doesn't want to win for people who forget you the moment you leave. At least I'm getting paid well for my trouble. It's not about the money. Then what is it about, David? The sound of my name and his voice was jarring. Duty? Honor? Those words don't mean anything out here. They're just stories we tell ourselves to sleep at night. They mean something to the people I serve with. They mean something to the people we're trying to help. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Help? You think you're helping? Every village you patrol through, every checkpoint you set up, you're just picking sides in a civil war that's been going on for generations. When you leave, and you will leave because America always leaves, what do you think happens to the people who helped you? I didn't have an answer for that, because he was right in a way. We would leave eventually. We always did. The difference between us, Marcus said, is that I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't wrap my work in flags and speeches. I'm a weapon. People point me at problems, and I solve them. Clean, simple, honest. You make people disappear, I said. I've seen the villages. They're terrified of you. They're terrified because fear is a tool, and I'm good with tools. But I've never taken anyone who wasn't a legitimate target, never harmed anyone who wasn't actively working against my client's interests. And who decides what's legitimate? Who decides who deserves to disappear? The people who pay me. He leaned back, studying me. You're judging me. I can see it in your face. It's strange seeing my own expressions on someone else. But you don't have the moral high ground here, brother. You've done things too, things that keep you up at night. Don't tell me you haven't.
He was right about that too. Afghanistan, 2016. A village raid that went wrong. Civilians caught in crossfire. Orders that came too late to prevent tragedy. I still heard the screams sometimes when I tried to sleep. I never pretended those choices were easy, I said. Never pretended I was proud of them. But you made them anyway, just like me. We're the same person, David. Same genetics, same instincts, same capacity for violence. The only difference is the story you tell yourself about why it's okay when you do it. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there was a fundamental difference between serving your country and serving whoever paid the most. But sitting there, looking at my own face twisted into something harder and colder, I wondered if he had a point. Maybe we were more alike than I wanted to admit. Marcus stood up. I'm going to leave you here tonight, give you time to think. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what happens next. My employers will want information about American positions, patrol routes, strength assessments. I'm hoping you'll cooperate, because if you don't... He paused at the door. Well, you know what I'm capable of, and I won't make exceptions just because we share DNA. After he left, I sat in the darkness and tried to process everything. The intelligence officers had said to build a relationship, to use the twin bond. But Marcus didn't seem interested in bonding. He saw me as a curiosity at best, an asset at worst. Or maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe beneath that cold exterior he was just as confused as I was, just as thrown by suddenly discovering a mirror image of himself. I needed a new approach. The next morning they brought me food, bread, cheese, water. Basic, but better than I expected. A Russian guard cut my zip ties long enough for me to eat, then secured them again afterward. An hour later, Marcus returned. This time he had a folder with him. I did some research last night, he said, sitting down across from me. Made some calls. Found out some interesting things about Staff Sergeant David Chen. Distinguished service record.
2 bronze stars, excellent marks from all your commanding officers. You're a model soldier. Is that supposed to be an insult? It's an observation. You bought into the system completely, believed everything they told you. I'm curious why. Because I didn't have anything else, I said. Foster care doesn't exactly set you up for success. The Army gave me structure, purpose, a path forward. It saved me. And now you're willing to die for it. If that's what it takes. Marcus set the folder aside. What if I told you there was another option? That you didn't have to die here, and you didn't have to betray your country either? I'm listening. Wagner Group is always looking for skilled operators, especially ones with U.S. military training. The pay is better than anything the Army offers. The work is more honest, and you'd be working alongside someone who understands you better than anyone else ever could. It took me a moment to understand what he was offering. You want me to switch sides? I want you to stop choosing sides at all, to recognize that this conflict isn't about right and wrong, it's about interests and power, to use your skills where they're valued and compensated properly. And if I say no? Then tomorrow I start asking questions you won't want to answer. And the day after that, if you still won't cooperate, I turn you over to people who are less patient than I am. He leaned forward. But it doesn't have to be that way. We could work together. Brothers, finally on the same team. For a moment, I saw what he was offering, a life where I didn't have to scrape by on military pay, where I could use my skills without the bureaucracy and politics, where I'd have a brother, something I'd never had before. It was tempting, more tempting than I wanted to admit. But then I thought about the villages I'd seen, the fear in people's eyes when they looked at Marcus's face, my face, the 3 men kneeling in the dust, the old woman who'd spat at me. I can't, I said. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Or was it relief? Like he'd been testing me, wanting me to fail so he could keep believing we were nothing alike. Then we do this the hard way, he said. He stood up, walked to the door, stopped. Without turning around, he said, "For what it's worth, I wish you'd said yes. Would have been nice to have family." The door closed. I sat there for a long time thinking about that last sentence. Would have been nice to have family. Past tense. Like he'd already written me off. Like I was already gone. The intelligence officers had said they'd have extraction assets nearby, that I'd have a way out if things went bad. But how would they know when to move? How long did I have before Marcus came with tools and methods I'd been trained to resist but never actually experienced? I needed to find a way out before that happened.
The room had one window, high up near the ceiling, too small to climb through, but I could see daylight. The door was solid metal, locked from the outside. The walls were concrete, no weak points that I could find. I was still working through possibilities when I heard gunfire outside. Not close, but not far either. Automatic weapons, multiple shooters. The door burst open. A Russian guard rushed in, grabbed my arm, hauled me to my feet. He said something in Russian I didn't understand, then dragged me out into a hallway. More gunfire, closer now. Someone was attacking the compound. The guard pulled me toward a back exit. We were almost there when the wall exploded inward. Not literally exploded, that's too dramatic, but a section collapsed as a vehicle crashed through it. Kurdish fighters poured through the gap, weapons up. In the chaos, the guard dropped my arm and went for his weapon. I threw myself sideways, rolled, came up moving. Someone cut my zip ties. Didn't see who, didn't stop to ask, just ran. Koban appeared beside me, thrust a rifle into my hands. "This way." We ran through smoke and dust, following Kurdish fighters who clearly knew the layout of this place. Outside, more gunfire. A truck waited, engine running. We piled in. As we pulled away, I looked back and saw Marcus in the doorway. He was watching us leave, not shooting, not pursuing, just watching. Our eyes met for a second across the chaos. Then, we rounded a corner, and he was gone. The ride back to base was tense and silent. No one asked questions, no one said anything at all. When we arrived, Captain Williams was waiting. "Debriefing," was all he said. "Now." In his office, the two intelligence officers from before were already there. They looked pleased with themselves. That went better than expected. We got good intel from monitoring the compound, identified key Russian personnel, and identified key Wagner personnel. "And Marcus?" I asked. "He's still out there, but now we know more about how he operates, what his patterns are. That's valuable." "You used me as bait." "We used you as an asset, which is what you volunteered to be." The younger officer pulled out a notepad. "Now, we need a full account of your conversations with Marcus Chen, everything he said, everything you said, every detail you can remember." I told them about the offer to switch sides, about Marcus's cynicism regarding the war, about his philosophy of honest work for honest pay. I told them everything except the one thing that kept playing in my head. Would have been nice to have family. When I finished, the older officer closed his notepad. "Good work, Sergeant. You've given us insights into how Marcus Chen thinks, what motivates him. That makes him easier to predict, easier to counter." "What happens now?" "Now, you go back to your regular duties. We'll continue monitoring Marcus, looking for opportunities to neutralize his effectiveness. You've done your part." "That's it? I just go back to running training exercises and pretend none of this happened?" Captain Williams spoke up. "That's exactly what you do, Sergeant. This operation is classified. You don't discuss it with anyone, not even members of your unit. Understood?" I understood. I also understood that they were done with me. I'd served my purpose. Whatever happened with Marcus next, I wouldn't be part of it. Over the next 2 weeks, I tried to return to normal. Ran training sessions, went on patrols, maintained equipment. But everywhere I went, people still stared, still saw Marcus when they looked at me. And I couldn't stop thinking about him, about how two people who started from the same genetic code could become such different things, about what would have happened if our positions had been reversed, if he'd been kept and I'd been given up for adoption. Would I have become him? Would he have become me? Or was there something deeper, something beyond environment and opportunity that made us who we were? I didn't have answers. Still don't. 3 weeks after the extraction, Koban found me cleaning weapons in the armory. "Here is something you should know about Marcus." "What about him?" 2 days ago, there was an operation. Kurdish forces, supported by American air assets. They hit a Wagner group position hard. 30 casualties. My stomach dropped. Was Marcus? He was not there. He had left the day before, but many of his people were lost. There is talk that he is angry, that he blames the Americans for breaking some unofficial understanding about targeting. There was no understanding. Perhaps there was, but he believes there was, and now he is looking for revenge. Looking how? Koban hesitated. He is asking questions about the American who was briefly held at the compound, about how the extraction happened so quickly, about who might have known he was there. He thinks I set him up. He thinks someone did, and you are the obvious suspect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus, about his words regarding honest work. In his mind, there were rules to this game, unofficial agreements between professionals on opposite sides, and someone had broken those rules. He didn't know it was an intelligence operation, didn't know I'd been sent deliberately to gather information on his positions. In his mind, he'd offered me a way out, a chance at family, and I'd repaid him by getting his people hit. I'd betrayed him without even meaning to. The attack came 4 days later. I was on patrol with Rodriguez and 6 Kurdish fighters, checking a village 20 kilometers from base. Standard hearts and minds run, nothing that should have been dangerous. We were walking through the market when I saw him, Marcus, dressed in local clothes, a scarf covering the lower half of his face. But I knew those eyes. They were my eyes. He was across the square, maybe 50 meters away, our gazes locked. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he started walking toward me, hand moving toward his waist.
"Rodriguez," I said quietly, "we need to leave. Now." "What? Why?" "Trust me. Move." But it was too late. Marcus was already drawing a pistol, and the market exploded into chaos. People screaming, running. Rodriguez and the Kurdish fighters bringing their weapons up, trying to identify the threat. I ran straight at Marcus, didn't think about it, just moved. If shooting started in this crowd, civilians would get hurt. I couldn't let that happen. I hit him like a linebacker, driving my shoulder into his chest. We went down together, tangled up in a fruit vendor's display, oranges everywhere, someone screaming in Arabic. We rolled, fighting for the weapon. It was like fighting my own reflection. Every move I made, he anticipated. Every counter I tried, he blocked. We were perfectly matched because we were the same person. The gun went off. Once. Twice. I didn't know where the bullets went. Didn't care. I just kept fighting, trying to get control. Then Rodriguez was there, pulling me off. Kurdish fighters had Marcus pinned, weapons on him. He wasn't struggling anymore, just staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Take him," Rodriguez said to the Kurdish fighters. "We're bringing him in." "No," I said, "you can't." "Chen, listen to me. You don't understand." "I understand plenty. This guy's been making our lives hell for months. Now we've got him. We're bringing him in." They zip-tied Marcus's hands, put a hood over his head, and loaded him into our vehicle. The entire ride back to base, I sat across from him, watching the hood move with each breath. He didn't say anything, didn't struggle, just sat there quietly, like he was waiting for something. At the base, they took him to a holding cell. Captain Williams was furious. "What the hell happened out there?" he demanded. "He tried to take me out, thought I'd set him up. The airstrike that hit his people, he blamed me." "Did you engage him?" "I prevented a shootout in a crowded market. Civilians would have been hurt." Williams studied me for a long moment. "The intelligence people are coming. They'll want to interrogate him. This is a major coup, Chen. We've got a Wagner Group operative in custody, someone who knows Russian positions, personnel, operations. This could change everything." That's what I was afraid of. They didn't let me near the holding cell, didn't want me anywhere near Marcus during interrogation. I understood why. The relationship was too complicated, too personal. I might compromise the process. But late that night, I went anyway. The guard on duty was a specialist named Torres who had helped out of a jam a few months ago. He owed me 5 minutes. That's all I need. Torres looked uncomfortable. "Chen, if they find out." "They won't. 5 minutes." He unlocked the door. Marcus was sitting on a concrete bench, hands still zip-tied. He looked up when I entered, unsurprised. "Came to gloat?" "Came to explain." "Don't bother. I figured it out already. The capture, the quick extraction, the airstrike, it was all part of an operation. You were sent to gather intel on me." "I didn't know about the airstrike. That wasn't part of the plan." "Does it matter? Your people used you to get close to me, to map our positions. My people lost their lives because I trusted the wrong person, because I thought maybe, just maybe, family meant something." The bitterness in his voice cut deeper than I expected. "It wasn't like that," I said. "I didn't want—" "What did you want, David? To understand your long-lost brother? To see if we could be family, all while wearing a wire for American intelligence?" "There was no wire, and I wasn't faking everything. When I listened to you talk about your life, about your choices, I was genuinely trying to understand." "And did you understand?"
I thought about that, about everything I'd learned, everything I'd seen. "Yeah," I said, "I think I do. You're angry at our birth mother for giving you up, at your adoptive parents for lying about it, at a system that treated you like a commodity. So you turned that anger into a philosophy, told yourself that everyone's just looking out for themselves, that loyalty is a lie, that the only honest thing is cash in hand." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Very insightful. You missed your calling as a therapist. But you're wrong about loyalty being a lie, about family not meaning anything." I moved closer. "When you offered me a way out, a chance to work together. Part of me wanted to say yes, not because the money or the freedom, because you're my brother and I wanted to know you. But I couldn't betray the people who depend on me, the ones who trust me. So you chose them over me? I chose my principles over convenience. Same choice you make every day, just different principles. He laughed, short and bitter. We're not the same, David, no matter how much you want to believe we are. You're right, we're not. Because when I had the chance to let you get hurt in that market, I stopped it. I could have let Rodriguez and the others open fire, could have solved everyone's problem. But I didn't, because despite everything, you're my brother. That means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to you. For a long moment, Marcus just looked at me. Then he said, "They're going to interrogate me. Probably already have a CIA team flying in. They'll want everything I know about Wagner Group operations, Russian positions, planned missions." I know. I'm not going to tell them anything. Not because of some noble principle, but because talking would get me taken out by my own people. So I'll sit in this cell, and eventually they'll transfer me somewhere worse, and I'll spend the rest of my life in a black site prison somewhere. Unless you cooperate, work with them, they'd offer protection, relocation. I'm not interested in their protection. I'm not interested in becoming an asset for the same system I've spent years working against. He leaned back against the wall. But I'll make you a deal. What kind of deal? There's a Wagner operation planned for next week, major one. They're going to hit a Kurdish position near Manjib. If your people don't know about it, a lot of good fighters are going to get hit hard. Why would you tell me this? Because those Kurdish fighters didn't do anything to me. This isn't their fight, not really. They're just trying to protect their homes. And because... He hesitated. Because you saved me in that market. You could have let it play out, but you didn't. So call this even. After this, we're done. No debts, no obligations. Marcus. That's the deal, David. Take it or leave it. I took it. The next morning, I went to Captain Williams and the intelligence officers, told them about the planned attack on Manjib. They moved fast, reinforcing the Kurdish position, setting up counter-ambush positions. When Wagner Group hit 3 days later, they walked into a prepared defense. The attack failed. Wagner lost 15 men. The Kurdish forces lost 3. That same day, Marcus escaped. I still don't know exactly how he managed it. The official report said there was a coordinated assault on the detention facility, that Wagner Group sent a team to extract him. Maybe that's true, or maybe someone inside helped him. Maybe someone decided that having Marcus Chen loose was more valuable than having him locked up. I have my suspicions about who that someone might have been, but I've never asked. Some questions are better left alone. After Marcus escaped, the intelligence officers questioned me for 6 hours straight, wanted to know if I'd helped him, if I'd compromised the facility, if I'd been working with him all along. Eventually, they decided I was clean, but the trust was gone. I could see it in their eyes. 2 weeks later, I was rotated home. Completion of assignment, the orders said, but everyone knew what it really meant. I'd become a liability, too connected to Marcus, too unpredictable. Better to send me stateside where I couldn't cause problems. I finished out my contract at Fort Benning, training new recruits. Safe work, boring work, the kind of assignment they give soldiers they don't trust but can't quite justify discharging. When my contract ended, I didn't re-enlist. I'd given the Army 12 years of my life. I'd deployed 3 times, earned commendations, did everything they asked of me. But after Syria, after Marcus, something had shifted. I couldn't look at the mission the same way. Couldn't pretend that everything was as clear-cut as the training manuals made it seem. So I got out, took my GI Bill benefits, enrolled in college, started studying international relations, trying to understand the bigger picture of the conflicts I'd been part of. My sister was relieved. She'd never liked me being deployed, never liked the idea of me in danger. She threw me a welcome home for real party, invited all her friends, made a big deal of it. I didn't tell her about Marcus, didn't tell her I'd met our brother, that I'd looked him in the eye and seen everything I could have become. Some things are too complicated to explain, even to family. 3 years passed. I graduated, got a job with an NGO that worked on conflict resolution in the Middle East. Ironic, maybe, but it felt right. Using my experience to try to prevent the kind of situations that had put me and Marcus on opposite sides. I was in my office in D.C., working on a report about private military contractors in Syria, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then, it's me. I knew the voice immediately. My own voice coming through the phone. Marcus. I need to talk to you, face to face. Where are you? Close enough. There's a coffee shop on K Street near your office. I'll be there in an hour. Come alone. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart beating too fast. Marcus was here, in D.C., wanting to meet. Every rational part of my brain said don't go, call the FBI, report the contact, let professionals handle it. Marcus was still wanted by multiple intelligence agencies. Meeting with him could destroy my career, potentially land me in legal trouble. But he was my brother, and despite everything, I wanted to know why he'd called. What had changed? I went. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd. I spotted Marcus in a back corner, wearing civilian clothes and a baseball cap. He'd grown a beard, changed his appearance slightly, but I still recognized him instantly. I sat down across from him. Neither of us spoke for a moment. You look different, I said finally. Civilian life suits you. I'm not civilian, just not Wagner anymore. What happened? After I got out of your custody, things got complicated. Wagner wasn't happy about the failed Manbij operation. They suspected I'd given up the intel, suspected I'd gone soft because of you. So I left before they could make it permanent. And now? Now I do freelance security consulting. Same work, different clients, better hours. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm not here to catch up on old times, David. I'm here because I need your help. With what? He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Inside were photographs, documents, maps. I recognized some of the locations: Syrian villages, Kurdish territories. Wagner Group is planning something big, Marcus said. Bigger than Manbij. They're going to stage a major operation in northeastern Syria, targeting the same areas where you were stationed. The goal is to destabilize the region, create chaos that benefits Russian interests. Why are you telling me this? Because a lot of people are going to get hurt if it happens, civilians mostly, the kind of people who just want to live their lives without getting caught in someone else's war. He leaned forward. And because I'm tired, David. Tired of being the guy who makes problems worse. Tired of waking up and not recognizing the person in the mirror. I looked at the documents. They were detailed, specific. Operational plans, target lists, timeline. This was valuable intelligence, the kind that could save lives. You could take this to the CIA yourself. They'd protect you, give you a new identity. I don't trust them, don't trust any intelligence agency, but I trust you. You've had chances to sell me out, to let me get hurt, and you didn't. That means something. What do you want me to do with this? Whatever you think is right. Give it to your NGO friends, leak it to journalists, pass it to Kurdish contacts. I don't care how you use it, just stop this operation from happening. I closed the folder. Why now? Why change sides after all these years? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer. More like the voice I used when I was alone, when I didn't have to be Staff Sergeant Chen. You remember what I said about it being nice to have family? I remember. I've been thinking about that, about how I spent most of my life believing I didn't need anyone, that the only person I could rely on was myself. And then I met you, and for a minute I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was something more important than money and survival. What changed? You did. You chose your principles over your brother, and at first I was angry about that, felt betrayed. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized you were right. Having principles, having something you won't compromise, that's what makes you different from me. That's what makes you better, David, whether you want to admit it or not. I'm not better than you, Marcus. I've just made different choices. Choices that saved lives. Choices that built something instead of tearing it down.
That's better, David, whether you want to admit it or not.
He stood up, dropped some cash on the table for the coffee we hadn't drunk. I'm leaving the country after this, going somewhere quiet, somewhere I can try to figure out who I am when I'm not being Marcus Chen, interrogation specialist. I don't know if I'll ever contact you again, but I wanted you to know that meeting you changed something, made me see that the story I'd been telling myself about the world wasn't the only story, wasn't even the true story. He held out his hand. I stood up and shook it, then pulled him into a brief hug. He tensed for a second, then relaxed. "Good luck, brother," I said. "You too." I watched him walk out of the coffee shop and disappear into the DC crowd. I never saw him again. The documents he gave me, I passed them to a contact who worked with Kurdish defense forces. They used the intelligence to prepare, to evacuate civilians from the target areas, to set up defenses. When Wagner Group launched their operation 2 weeks later, they found empty villages and prepared positions. The operation failed without a single civilian casualty. The reports never mentioned Marcus, never mentioned how the intelligence was obtained. As far as the world knew, it was just good reconnaissance and smart planning. I kept the folder, though, locked in a safe in my apartment. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I take it out and look through the documents. At Marcus's handwriting, at the detailed maps he'd drawn, at the care he'd taken to make sure I had everything I needed. My phone still has that unknown number in the call log. I've never tried calling it back. Part of me hopes he found whatever he was looking for, wherever he went. Part of me knows I'll probably never know for sure. Emma asked me once if I had any regrets about joining the army, about the deployments and the things I'd seen. I told her no, which wasn't entirely true. I regret that it took a war to find my brother. I regret that we only had those few conversations, those brief moments of connection before circumstances pulled us apart again. I regret that I didn't get to know him as a kid, as a teenager, as anything other than an enemy combatant turned reluctant ally. But I don't regret the choices I made. I don't regret choosing my principles over convenience. And I don't regret that in the end, maybe I helped Marcus find his own principles. Helped him see that family, real family, isn't about shared DNA or growing up in the same house. It's about the choices you make for each other. About showing up when it matters, even when it costs you something. Marcus showed up for those Kurdish civilians, for people he'd never met, who'd never done anything for him. He showed up because somewhere along the way, he'd started believing that some things were worth fighting for beyond money and survival. Maybe that's what family taught him. What I taught him. Or maybe he knew it all along, just needed someone to remind him. I work with a lot of veterans now through the NGO. Guys who've deployed multiple times, who've seen things that changed them, who struggle to reconcile what they did overseas with who they want to be at home. I tell them what I learned from Marcus. That you're not defined by your worst moments. That change is possible, even when it feels impossible. That sometimes the hardest battles aren't against enemies, but against the stories we tell ourselves about who we have to be. Some of them believe me. Some don't. I keep telling them anyway. Because if Marcus Chen, Wagner Group interrogation specialist, could change his story, then anyone can. Last month, I got a package in the mail. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in Southeast Asia. Inside was a photograph. It showed a man, Asian, medium build, beard, standing in front of a small schoolhouse. Kids were gathered around him, smiling. The man was smiling too, a genuine smile I'd never seen on Marcus's face during our time together. On the back of the photo, written in handwriting I recognized, were 4 words: building instead of tearing down. I put the photo on my desk, next to the one of Emma and her kids. Family. Different than I expected, smaller than I hoped for, more complicated than I could have imagined, but real. And in the end, that's what matters. I learned that some truths don't set you free. They just give you something new to carry. But sometimes, if you're lucky, someone helps you carry it.
even if only for a little while. Even if that someone shares your face but lived a completely different life. Even if you only got to know them for a few brief, intense moments before the world pulled you apart again. That's enough. It has to be. Because family isn't about the time you get. It's about what you do with it. And what Marcus and I did, in our messy way, was save each other. He saved me from becoming cynical, from losing faith in the principles I'd built my life on. And maybe, just maybe, I saved him from becoming someone he could never come back from. That's the story I tell myself anyway. It's a better story than the alternative. And out here, in this complicated world where nothing is as simple as we want it to be, sometimes a better story is the best we can hope for.